My name is Jeremy Adams. I've been a teacher at Bakersfield High School for 19 years. I've been at CSUB for 12 years in the political science department. Last few years, I've written 2 books on teaching and education. I have to tell you, this is a very different audience than what I'm used to at 10:20 in the morning. Typically, I have second semester seniors. I don't have to tell any of you, sit up, put your cell phones away. Don't mention the word senioritis. I don't want to hear it. That being said, I have to tell you, I see that look in some of your faces. You're thinking to yourselves, great, they got a high school economics teacher to be a speaker. This is not going to go well. This is going to be painful. I know how this goes. I know how this looks. And I just screwed up my presentation. Again. Like that. Isn't that what you're thinking when you think high school economics teacher? Now, I actually tried this joke on my students a few days ago, and they didn't get it. Do you know why? They've never heard of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, if that makes you feel old, consider the fact that in the last year, I have had students who have never heard of Magic Johnson. They have never heard of Madonna. They have never heard of the show Friends. Most of the students who sit in my classroom today have never touched an encyclopedia. So, when I was asked to speak today, I said, well, I don't really give talks to economic groups. I talk to teachers and students and writers. I really don't talk to economic summits. They said, no, we want you to talk about your students. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something that is near and dear to every Bakersfield educator's heart, and that is something called the Bakersfield syndrome. Put those phones down, don't Google it. It's not on the internet. And when my speech is over, Justin Salters, if you put it on Wikipedia, you give me credit, because he wants to be famous for it. But if you have lived in Bakersfield your whole life, you probably had the Bakersfield syndrome. If you have raised teenagers in this community, I guarantee you've heard of the Bakersfield syndrome. Now, you can't tell who's afflicted, but it's almost always 15 to 20-year-olds, and you have to listen closely. You will hear phrases like, I am just so over this place. This town is so small, there is nothing to do here. And my favorite is when a student goes away for 2 days and they come back and say, LA, they just get it. They just get it. Now, I've never understood what it is, but the students have the Bakersfield syndrome. They don't appreciate Bakersfield. And what I want to talk to you about today is the fact that Bakersfield is not just a great place to grow up and to have a career and to have a job. It can be a model for the future. Now, I don't want to slam my students. I understand them. I've never heard anybody complaining about the overwhelming beauty as they drive down Rosedale. I've never heard anybody complain about the air in August being too clean. I've lived in Bakersfield my whole life. Frankly, people go to Oregon and they're like, it's so clean. I'm like, I'm from Bakersfield. I want to know what's going in here. I want to see what's going in my lungs. I don't trust that air. I don't know. I've never heard of anybody complaining because we have so much positive press from the national media. And yes, even there are some parts of the year where I kind of get the Bakersfield syndrome. During Oscar season, I would like to watch Moonlight. I would like to watch some of these Oscar movies. Now, if Iron Man 15 comes out, there are 20 theaters, right? But not anything for the Oscar. So I understand the Bakersfield syndrome. I do, I get it. But what I want to talk to you about today is the idea that Bakersfield is an extraordinary launch pad for our young people to achieve their dreams. And I say that today without any hollow rhetoric or empty oratory. You see, I have seen the magic in our classroom too many times to believe that magic is only in Hollywood or at Disneyland. You see, I stand at a fascinating intersection of our culture. I would say even a privileged intersection, where policy and parenting intersect, where technology and culture intersects. My friends and I sometimes comment that we teachers see trends a year or two before they appear on the cover of The Atlantic or the New York Times. And it's easy to disparage our community because sometimes we don't see the great things about this place. We don't see that Bakersfield is number 3 in the nation for millennial home ownership. We don't see that Bakersfield is number 5 for upward mobility, number 20 for affordability. And consider this, my Cal State friends, or the most amazing statistics about our community. 81% of CSUB students enrolled in the 1990s who come from the bottom 5th of the economic ladder have risen to the top 2/5. And I'm a proud road runner. All that being said, there is no doubt that we are living in an age of extraordinary anxiety and economic disruption. If you doubt that, consider the fact that in 2010, many of the companies, 40% of the companies that have been listed in the Fortune 500 10 years before had vanished. Now, I don't know about you, but I also find the evolution of this economy to be somewhat odd and dispiriting. Consider the fact that the largest taxi company in the world is Uber. They have no taxis. The largest provider of movies in the world is Netflix. They have no theaters. Airbnb has no real estate. Google the phrase, jobs that will disappear, and look at the thousands of pages that come up. Or consider this fact, that the students who sit in my classroom every day will have a very different kind of economy where they have to be willing to have 7 or 8 different kinds of jobs in their lifetime. And so this is where I come in, and my colleagues come in. You see, anybody who knows me and knows my writing knows that I've spent my entire life in civics education. I am an unapologetic, bleeding heart American romantic that believes that the creation of the United States of America is one of the greatest things to ever happen in history itself. And I don't apologize for that. As Teddy Roosevelt once said, we Americans go into the arena, right? We don't champion the critic. We don't champion the person who points out how the strong man stumbles. We want our young people to go into the arena of life. Why? Because what do we Americans do? We strive, we reach. Ambition is good. Dreaming is good. And yet the arena that our students are going into is uncertain. It's scary. And it's evolving at a pace that puts us off. For instance, we all know, you ask the average American, they know that the occupations of the future are going to demand more of them. They know that you have to have higher analytical skills, better social skills. Consider this for just a moment, right? Consider this, that if you look at the jobs of the future that don't even exist yet, you might ask me, well, what are you doing about it? And the answer is, I have no idea. They haven't been created yet. 70% of jobs 90 years ago were in agriculture. When I was a high school senior, which was not that long ago, I don't know where Amanda Frank is. She was my physics partner. I carried her the whole way, okay? She always got home late from hot dog on a stick. And I have pictures if anybody wants them. Consider that when Amanda and I were in high school, we had never heard of the word internet. Consider that I had been teaching for 5 years before Google had even been created, and that has revolutionized every classroom in America. Consider that just 10 years ago, Twitter was born, and it has changed American politics forever in ways that were completely unpredictable. And that is an understatement. Okay? So let me get this straight. We teachers are supposed to be preparing our students to enter an arena that is uncertain, for jobs that have yet to be created, in a fully digitalized, globalized, technologically driven, agile economy. What are we supposed to do? It's hard. It's difficult. It's almost insurmountable, right? Wrong. This is where Bakersfield students and the best among us can be a model for how to enter the arenas of the future. And what I'd like to do today is highlight 3 of my most successful students. Again, sorry, just insulted you, didn't make it on there, okay? 3 of my most successful students who I think have something to teach every single aspiring American in this country. The first one, this will make you feel old, by the way. None of my students have ever heard of this movie either, A League of Their Own. But there's a great quote, and Tom Hanks says, if it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. My friends, somewhere in the past, I don't know when this started, we have convinced our young people that things are supposed to be easy, that everybody gets a trophy, that achievement can be done on the cheap. And yet my best students know that greatness is not a chance, it is a choice. A common characteristic of my best students is that when they fail, they don't blame the teacher. They don't blame their parents. They don't blame the coach. They don't blame society. They look at the mirror and they say to themselves, I can do better. In fact, the student I would like to talk about today didn't go into business like so many of you. He was an artist. He was a dancer. And he went to Bakersfield High School early in my career, and he was only there for 2 years. Then he, of course, if you think being a male dancer in high school doesn't bring bullying, you're wrong, right? But he endured. He endured. And he went away to Pennsylvania to get more education in dancing. Then he went to Virginia, and then he struggled and he struggled and he struggled. And finally, 6 months ago, I get contacted by this former student. And he says, Mr. Adams, I was in your class many years ago, and it meant a lot to me. And even though I'm a dancer and you teach world history, and yes, I am a dancer too, but not like that, okay? Your class made a difference to me. And I'm now in a show. I'm 30 years old now. I'm in a show, and I want you to come watch me dance on this show. And I really want you to bring your family too. And of course, I was honored to do that. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, the show is Hamilton. You might think, by the way, that watching a former student perform on Broadway is the apogee of a career, and it was extraordinary. And just on a side note, there are some things that there are not enough superlatives in the universe for. Hamilton on Broadway is one of them. It never disappoints. It was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. But that wasn't even the best part of my day. The best part was later that evening. I went to Hell's Kitchen after the show with Voltaire. By the way, greatest name of any student ever, Voltaire. And he has a brother, by the way, named Vladimir. The family is great. But afterwards, we went to dinner. And of course, you have to understand, I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, and he is a demigod to them. They had memorized Hamilton. They've been singing Hamilton for months. And so he was a celebrity to them. And what I appreciate the most about Voltaire that day was he taught my girls how difficult it was to achieve greatness. Now, it was great hearing him talk about meeting President Obama and meeting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Mike Tyson and all of these celebrities. But he looked at my girls and he said, you know what? My serpentine journey toward success was rife with failure. It was supposed to be hard. If you want to put a dent in the universe, you can't punch it once. You have to punch and kick, and sometimes you have to get a hammer. But if you expect things to be hard, eventually you can achieve your dreams. And that is something that every student must know, no matter how this economy evolves. Now, the second point, the second habit of the mind and of the heart that every student should have, no matter how this economy changes, is being inspirable. Now, I'll be honest. I almost didn't put this slide in the program. I venture to guess that this is the first slide at the Kern County Economic Summit that has a rainbow in it, right? But let me tell you right now, the kinds of workers and the kinds of entrepreneurs that we will have someday is proportional to how inspirable young people are. You see, maybe we don't talk about this typically at this summit. I know we're talking about GDP and nominal and real interest rates, and we're talking about the federal funds rate and monetary policy and fiscal policy, and that's all great. But don't we know on a basic human level that there are moments of life that brim with significance, that pulsate with possibility? Moments when the clockwork of the universe slows down for just a moment and tells us we're special. Our lives matter. Do you know what that's called? It's called inspiration. The ability to believe that your life can be connected to something greater than yourself. This is the greatest student I have ever had in my lifetime. He graduated in 2004. Yes, he went to Harvard and studied economics. Yes, he went to Yale Law School. Yes, he's going to be on the Supreme Court someday. But you know what I remember about Mr. Jeffrey Lynn? I don't remember his brilliance. I remember that he was impressionable. He could be inspired. I remember that he would learn about Socrates and apply it to his life. That he would study current events and it would shape his political perspective. You see, he is the kind of student that every teacher lives for. Why? Because we want our students to understand the magical possibilities of the classroom. If our classroom does not echo beyond the corridors of our school, then we're not doing the job of educators. And he was inspirable like no other. Finally, I want my students to learn how to fail. It's going to sound like I'm copying our last panelists, but it's true in every venue in life, isn't it? Science, the arts, every profession. For those of you who like 30 for 30, there's a great 30 for 30 special about the Buffalo Bills. And it's interesting how the men on those teams, even though they failed to win a Super Bowl 4 years in a row, almost every single one of them would say, it made me into a better human being. My favorite writer of all time, Saul Bellow, won the National Book Award 3 times. His college professor said he had no talent. Ray Kroc had never seen a McDonald's until he was 52. Steven Spielberg was rejected by USC twice. Steven Spielberg was an English teacher. And at night, he was working on his first novel. And he was writing, and he was writing, and he was writing. He got so frustrated one night that he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash can. His wife dug it out because that was the manuscript for Carrie. All of these people who achieve greatness know how to fail. So I want to introduce you to Mr. McGill Lopez. McGill Lopez is the embodiment of the American dream. It is a quintessential American journey. He was given very little. His mother came from Mexico. His father was from El Salvador, and he didn't try very hard when he was a young man. But something clicked when he was 15 years old. He began to grasp that Jeffersonian truth of agency, that I am in control of my life, that millions of people across this world would die for the opportunities that I'm wasting every day. And at 15, a fire was lit under him. And by the time he graduated from Bakersfield High School, he did well enough to get into UC Irvine, where he continued to excel and work and work. He's just like Hamilton. He's young and scrappy. After 3 years, he gets a dream internship, which is going to lead to his dream job. And then do you know what happens to McGill Lopez? He gets sick. He gets meningitis. He has to drop out of college. He loses his dream job. But he already had known how to fail before. He knew that it was a hurdle, but it wasn't a hurdle that couldn't be jumped. So he goes back to school. He gets a better job than he ever would have had before. I want everybody to remember the name McGill Lopez because he is a reminder that in our country, in this America, the great American novel is not always written by the valedictorian. It is not the test-taking maestros of the world that always have the most grit or embrace the most arduous grind. It is not always the students who have the answers that have the questions that change the world. I thought about not putting this slide in my presentation either. It's my final slide because I was afraid I was going to get emotional in front of 500 people. This is my Bakersfield journey. All of these examples that I've given you today, people who have learned how to fail, people who are inspirable, people who are capable of knowing that the good things in life are difficult. They come from this community, and they are exemplars for the future. Look at what this community, my town, has done for me. On the left there was a shack 60 years ago, and that is where my father grew up in Oildale. Today, it's a little bit of a bigger house. But he got an education at Beardsley. He got an education at North High. He went into the military and served his country, and he came back and he was one of the first graduates of CSUB, and then he went on to be a legendary teacher in this community. All of those things were possible because of the opportunities that Bakersfield gave him. So I'm not going to apologize for being from this extraordinary city and this community. And I hope it reminds all of us in this room today that America is not a solo, it is a symphony. It requires all of us. So many of you give so much to the young people of this county through philanthropy and charity and mentoring. We all must be willing to use our voices and contribute to the course of our country, of our community. And if we aren't willing to do that, then tomorrow won't be better than today. But I believe it will be if we learn from the best of Bakersfield. Thank you so much for the invitation. Appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Thank you.